What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Scott DeLong with the CEO Podcast. I'm here as always with my partner, Vince Moiso. And we're in season 5 already. This is actually our second episode of season 5. And it's been a nice ride. It's been a lot of fun. And we've decided to do a few things a little bit differently. We're going to have a few more guests and maybe some more remote guests coming up. So that's part of the biggest portion of the new.
Yep.
But we're also going to go back and revisit some of the topics that we've used, but only on a different angle and a different slant from those.
Right.
Today happens to be one of those. So we're going to talk about culture. It seems to be a topic that people like hearing about and trying to understand, well, what does it really mean and how do you go about it? But Vince came up with the thought that why don't we take a little bit deeper and talk about a transition of culture? And in one case, what you're going to talk about is going to be a transition from a toxic work culture into one that's much more loving is the word you use. That's a business term, right?
Well, no, caring, passionate, loving, recognition,
inclusive,
acknowledgement, inclusive,
things
all
like
those
that.
things. Yeah.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about that as well. And I've got another story that we can talk about, changing from the entrepreneurial culture into a professionally managed organization, because I've done that several times with clients as well. And that's not an easy transition either. So this is about culture and transition.
Yeah.
So why don't you lead us off and talk to us a little bit about an organization that you're doing some work with that is going through that.
Yeah.
Gone through that.
Yeah, there's nothing better than case study, right? Yeah. So, again, it just goes back to the essence of when we started this podcast, it's really around experience share. Right. And I think there's nothing better than that, the learning experience and actually going through it. So there's a lot of theory around culture and shift of culture, right? Yeah. And certainly there's a lot of playbooks around culture that you can read about. I think the case studies are as good as they get. I mean, especially for me, as I go out and talk about it, teach about it, coach about it, anything like that, or being involved in it, certainly putting what we talk about into practice is pretty incredible, because we've talked a lot about inclusivity, right? And we've talked a lot about empowerment and allowing people to lead, allowing people to really empowering them to do their jobs and take on their responsibility.
With the tools so that they can be empowered, right? So it's not just saying, "Here, go do it. You have permission." It's more than that.
On developing them, right? Yeah. So then coaching them. And then more importantly, when you have a leadership team that is then providing a high level of support, right? That just lifts those people up to be successful.
Support and example.
Yeah.
Being the example. And we can't say one thing and then act in a different way and expect people are going to go based on how we're acting, right?
Yeah.
They're going to take the lowest common denominator, which is if we're acting less than our words, they're going to believe the act.
Yeah.
If we're acting above our words, they're going to believe the word. So the lowest of the two is what people are actually going to believe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So the organization that I'm currently involved in is really in the process of going from a fearful organization to a fearless organization.
And
so which we talked about, right? And I'm intentionally talking about that because we, as you and I were discussing this topic, you brought up something interesting, and you just talked about creating that psychologically safe environment. And I think that is the number one most critical component to shifting culture. So if you are going to transition from a toxic culture to one of a loving culture, then it has to be fearless. It has to be psychologically safe, because you have to create, when you're going into meetings, here's the specific example. And a lot of folks that are part of this organization have shared this with me, that previously they were very afraid to speak up because of what that backlash was going to be. They were very afraid to offer creative ideas, or really to say, hey, I have this data that tells me otherwise. Maybe we should think about this, because they were in fear of some sort of retaliation with any sort of comment that wasn't aligned with whoever was speaking, right?
So real or imagined retaliation.
That's right.
It could be as simple as an eye roll.
In this case, so I've heard the stories, and if I told you the stories, you wouldn't believe it. I will tell you it was real, not imagined. Yeah. And so it happened so often, right, that it was, I would equate it to, you know, the beat animal, right? The dog, right? You know, whatever it is, it's just, you know, you beat an animal to a point where you go to pet it. You know, if you've ever done that with a dog and you go to pet the dog and the dog, fearful, you know, winces like this, then...
Or in the circuses, they train elephants, right? They chain their leg, and all of a sudden they don't need the chain on their leg anymore attached to anything. They just need a little bit of chain because that's what they're used to. They're used to seeing it. They expect it. That's what's going to happen, and it happens the same place in the world.
Man, it's so sad too. Like honestly, it breaks my heart when I hear the stories. It makes me sick to my stomach in a lot of ways. I'm actually blown away that there was an organization that toxic, and excited at the same time that I get to be part of a leadership team that can bring something totally different to the table. Because it is exciting to all of a sudden be in a place where people do get the opportunity to speak up in a meeting, to bring their ideas, and they're celebrated for it. And the best part, they get the opportunity to make mistakes. And there's no fear that there's going to be some sort of repercussion for making that mistake.
I like the line, and I see it quite often. I mean, I never lose. I either win or I learn. So that's what, in this organization, one of my favorites. Now, they're learning from, if they're allowed to make mistakes and we learn from them, life is good. If we're not learning from them, it's a problem. And so it doesn't mean creating a good culture doesn't mean no accountability. It doesn't at all. In fact, just the opposite of that. In fact, if people are not learning from their mistakes, it is our job, our leaders' job, to hold those folks accountable in either to learn or move on.
Oh, and in fact, we are highly accountable. So there's no doubt that a culture of accountability has been weaved into this transition. So we're still accountable, and we get recognized, right? So there's a lot of recognition, there's a lot of acknowledgement, there's a lot of empowerment that's happening, and all of a sudden, you've got all these fearless meetings that are happening, right? And it's just become this culture of ideas, and we're bouncing off. Well, what was before, you can imagine a lot of silos, right? Sure. Because you're going to recoil, you're going to come back, you're going to wrap your arms around your little department, and you're going to say,
we're going to support our vice president.
I'm over here on my own, and this is what we're going to do. Right. And now those floodgates have been opened up, and you've got an entire organization working together, and that's also a change.
So let's talk a little bit about process, because it certainly needs to come from the top. This transition
100%.
And change needs to come from the top.
It has to start from the top.
However, that is not the only place that it needs to take place.
Yeah.
Right. We'll go back and talk about psychological safety, in that anybody in that meeting can, even if the boss is completely safe, anybody in that meeting can ruin the safety.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. With their reactions.
That's right.
And so the leader has to insist on what it is that they're looking for.
Yep.
And the people in the room or in the organization, depending on how large a group you're talking about, need to believe and trust that that is true, and then need to be able to do that with everybody else in the room, with peers, with superiors, with subordinates. It doesn't matter, right? We need to be able to create that inclusion and create that safety so that anybody can speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and you started it when we started this conversation. You said it. You got to lead by example. So it starts with that leadership, right? So the transition starts to happen, and it does take time. Let's be clear here. This is a work in progress, and it's going to take time. It just doesn't happen overnight. It starts with key leadership, and leadership has to lead by example. So you have to come into these meetings, you have to present when you're having your one-on-ones, whatever that might be, you have to lead by example. Then that starts to rub off on others, and others are going to then, you create what I'd call leadership across across all departments.
Can lead from any level.
Right. And now when fear gets dismissed and they're seeing it at the top, now that starts to trickle down, and even your side meetings or sub meetings are happening in that same manner, which is really cool.
I'm going to ask you a question here. Let's talk a little bit about very specific. So in order to make that transition, somebody has to say we need a change, right? Mm-hmm. Then they need to do what? What did the person that brought this change into that organization, mm-hmm. specifically, what were their first steps? Did they talk to others about it first? Did they just start showing it? How did that play?
Yeah, so the first thing right out of the gate was what I'd equate to be somewhat of a town hall type meeting.
Great.
And then there was a very vocal shift. Like I'm putting a stake in the ground right here. Here are the changes that are going to happen. I realize that you may not believe this, and I'm going to lead by example and show you this is exactly how things are going to be moving forward. And I need you guys to be on board, and I want you guys to feel empowered, to feel free and fearless.
So this leader talked to other leaders first and then the town hall, or was it all at once? Let's get specifics.
Yeah, no, both. I mean, of course, there was alignment across leadership, and then I think the town hall was then across other leadership and all departments.
There was also a change. My understanding is there was also a change in the top level.
Yeah. So
the people that were creating the toxicity first.
Let's take a step back.
Had to exit.
Yeah. No, let's take a step back. So where the toxicity, the source of the toxicity was let go. Yeah. That was completely dismissed. Yep. And I think as you start to shift culture, then some of that bubbles to the top, right? Because you think you get to the source of it and you get rid of most of it. And that's key. You're going to get rid of most of it, but not all of it, because some of it's masked.
The old wounds are still there.
Yeah, some of it's
have history. Right?
Some of it's a little masked, and so as you start to create,
because that was effective, right? I mean,
in a way, it was.
It worked. I mean, it helped them build their company. I don't know if that's what helped them build the company, but they were able to build their company even with the toxic culture.
Been around for 40 years.
So somebody thought it worked.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So and
we're talking about $1 billion organization too. It's
eliminated the toxicity,
or at least most of it. Right. Okay. And then what happens as you start to really transition, you have to live it. Right. So you say, great, I'm putting a stake in the ground, and this is how it's going to be moving forward. Then obviously there's leaders that emerge, and you can start to build out a plan that says, great, here's this department, this department. Now you recognize that there's silos that were happening. Yep. Now we got to bring it together. So you create a different organizational structures, because you can't.
May be some of that old loyalty within those silos, old loyalty to the people that left anyway, right?
Sure, and that's what I'm talking about. That bubbles up, and then over time, those people are let go as well. So there's still some attrition that will occur because some people aren't going to like it. Right? They're not going to thrive in an environment like that. Right. Others are going to be, they just got missed as a part of that toxicity. And so that attrition is going to naturally happen as well. And then you do have to change the organizational structure in a way, right? You got to get people bought in to this new leadership style and the new way that we're approaching. And all of a sudden we're opening up the floodgates for people to really thrive in a business and work together. So you have to change your organizational structure. So you got to bring departments together. So some will get consolidated, as an example, rightly so, and they should be cross-functioning and probably should have a long time ago. But under that different organization,
it's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah. Now it's very possible to bring those together. Now you've got a sharing of information that's occurring that has never occurred in the business before, which is really killer.
Let me ask a slightly different question. I mean, it's easy to eliminate the toxic employees, the toxic management. Sometimes not as easy, but once that's done, the board gets rid of the toxic management, and we start looking for the toxic employees. Can anybody change? Can they change though? Can there be someone that might have been loyal to the old guard that sees the light and change?
Yeah.
Or is it just eliminate completely?
No, you know what? It's look, I look at it, I'll equate it to, wasn't so indifferent in coming into the manufacturing organization as well, over 7 years ago at this point. There was it's a great organization, always has been, and the culture has been very, very solid always, but nonetheless, massive change, right? So we're going through an asset acquisition and scaling the business and changing the culture of the business because we just have we have to change it organizationally, make a lot of changes from a product perspective, from a sales perspective, shifting strategy. All of these things change an organization, but primarily change the culture of the business, and it exposes a lot of people. It really does. And there's some people that thrived in the old way. And it just doesn't work in the new way.
Right.
And it's no different whether you're talking about this new case study or the one I'm referring to. It makes no difference. Reality is there's going to be natural attrition because there's people that are going to thrive in that new culture and others that are going to struggle.
Well, so the reason I asked that question so directly is because that's what my work is about getting people to change.
By the way, and I feel like, I'm sorry, so I feel like I didn't totally answer your question, is there are people, the reason I brought that up is I've lived it for the last 7 years. There are clearly people that embrace the change and can and will change and have done an amazing job of absolutely changing and shifting. And that is the case over in this other case study. I'm talking about the new one. There are 2 or 3 individuals that I know of directly that is just a radical shift. But I think, imagine if you go from being, totally disciplined in an incredibly healthy way to getting hugs. It's like,
it could be a little scary for a whole bunch of people.
But for some people, they're like, oh my God, they're totally free from the person that created.
So here's where I want to be clear: is that the toxicity exists, and that person over there might have been toxic, but they still can be saved. We don't need to just wholesale fire all the old guard.
Totally.
Now, there may be an opportunity or a time where you need to fire the old guard, certainly. But I have seen people working on embracing the difference. Right? I happen to be one of them. Frankly, I happen to be one of those people that made that kind of transition and change myself. But I work with people to make that transition. And here's the key to that, right? First of all, they have to trust that this is the way, that this new way is the way. They have to believe that. And second, it's all about self-reflection and what they're going to do. It's about taking responsibility for their own actions rather than blaming the other people for what is happening. I mean, you can always piss me off, right? You can do something to piss me off.
Yeah.
It's up to me to react to that or act upon the information and act in a better way. We can make that choice. So self-reflection and knowing where you want to go, those changes are they're not easy, but they're possible. This is where the coaching piece comes into play.
Yeah.
It's good to have somebody that can help you see it from a different angle, help you reframe issues to see that there is another possibility, and that can hold you accountable. And in fact, that's exactly what I believe a coach does.
Yeah, in this case, you've got 20 plus year employees sticking around. You got 10-year plus employees sticking around, and they've absolutely embraced the new culture. And in my opinion, they're thriving, and they deserve it. They deserve a lot of accolades because, to me, it exudes perseverance and, their ability to just weather a storm is unbelievable, and then just emerge as great leaders within the business. And, now getting the opportunity to really speak up and speak out and be free to do so without repercussion, I think is just going to, these people are already incredibly talented, so I can imagine what they're going to do under this new type of culture. It just opens up a whole new world. So, Scott, I know you have an example too.
Yeah, go to that.
Yeah, you've experienced it. I've experienced it many times. But why don't you talk a little bit about your case study as well?
So what we're talking about, this whole transition, this cultural transition, doesn't always work. It doesn't always work, right? Even with all the best laid plans and the work that gets put into it. And I'll give you an example of an organization that I was working with where they had a very engaging, charming founder and built the company as much as they could in this entrepreneurial spirit, right? That to say, shooting from the hip and going after every deal and doing all those kind of things. Yeah. They did pretty well and built a nice organization out of it. But they realized that they needed to have a change and to go into if they wanted to get to that next level, turn into a professionally managed organization, right? Don't lose the entrepreneurial spirit, but a professionally managed organization by bringing in systems and controls and structure and improving the culture at the same time. The culture is not just around one human being now and their will and their whim and how they're feeling that day, but it's based around the organization. So I came in and worked with the organization, and we did a lot of good things. In fact, people were like really embracing the change. They're saying, man, this is so cool. I really like this. In order to get to that spot, I had to ask the founder to step away. Didn't fire the founder, had to ask him to step away. Yeah. Let us work this, all right? And he did. He did, and things got better until they didn't. It's his company, it's his baby, it's all that kind of stuff. I get that, right? But he kept wanting to inch back in and come back in, and that's fine as long as you're inching back in and you're willing to learn and be a part of this was great. But it was like a friggin' tornado when he came in. Yeah. And it just swirled things up. And while I'm going to guess that 85% of the employees resisted that whirlwind, those that bought into the old guard, that toxic piece, right? Yeah. Really embraced it. And they said, see, this is what it's supposed to be. He'd come in, swirl things up, and then leave. And then I had to deal with the 15% that wanted to do with that. So it came to a spot where I finally just said, you either have to be here every day or not at all. Interesting. If you're here every day, we can work with this and get you in with this new culture as well. Or you have to step out completely. Or I'm going to step out completely. And unfortunately, in this case, that's what happened. I stepped out. Because I couldn't manage that piece where they'd come in and create that tornado and then deal with it. Because I didn't want to fire those 15% of the people. They were like good human beings that wanted to do good work, but they got caught up in this whirlwind. And well, fast forward to today, he's out, right? And it's being managed by a whole different group. Very professional. So let's just talk about that for a second, because conceptually speaking, you were in the right place. Like that's what needed to happen for this organization. Going in the right direction. So you were going in the right direction, but I think what I hear from that, and I'm close enough to it where I know the business and I know the folks involved there at this. What I hear from that is that it is hard for an entrepreneur, for an owner, for a principal in a business to let go of that business. It's their baby. It's really incredibly difficult to give up control. And the biggest part of that, there's one word that encompasses that is trust, right? You have to trust somebody, and especially as an entrepreneur, and we've all been screwed over once or twice by certain people that we've brought into the organization and through a lot of trust to. And so you get burned once or twice is what, burn me once, shame on me, or burn me once, shame on you, burn me twice, shame on me. Right. So I think I sound like George W. there for a second. Sorry. Had to throw that out there. I'm going to build a library for you now. But my point being, Scott, is that I recognize that it is challenging for a leader, an owner, a principal in a business to just step aside. We've talked about the book, Scott Fritz's book, The 40-Hour Work Year, a couple of times, right? And that is this concept that you're talking about, where you can move away from your business and have someone else completely run it. And that is let's just be clear about this. That is as much a culture transition as it is anything else. And I'm actually good if that founder that wants to do the 40-hour work year, right, wants to be part of a board, part of some, monthly, weekly check-ins, all of that kind of stuff. Yep. but don't come in and just create a whirlwind, right? Which you will just by your presence, right? Because you are the charm of the organization, and people want to see what you're wondering here and there, right? Either embrace it fully and get on board, or step aside and let someone else do it. The culture is that important. It's that important to the happiness of the employees, the employee experience, and the better the employee experience, the better the work product that you're going to get out of those folks, and the longevity with those people.
No question.
Happy people don't leave, right? They turn down raises from other organizations. Yeah. So if you want to get more productive people, if you want to get happier people, if you want to get people that are going to stick with you longer, it's all about culture.
Yeah, no, look, I marvel. I'm surrounded, in this new organization, I'm just surrounded by talent, and I'm very grateful, and I'm learning as much from them as they are from me. And I marvel at their perseverance, right? And now they've stuck it out, and now they've got this whole new world open. And
now you're hearing stories from those people, how much different it is, and how much happier they are, and all that, right?
Yeah. No, it's cool, and now they're in a space. In a place that they love. They love the product. They love the company itself and what it stands for, and the brand and all of that. And now
the people they're working with and for.
That's right. And now they get to thrive.
So how often do people use the word love in a business organization?
Yeah, not often.
Why not?
Yeah,
right? I actually had a client that we were working on their core values, offsite retreat, and one of the things were the core values. These folks ended up with love in their core values. It was so cool. I'd never heard it before.
Yeah, I think it's
core
really
value,
cool.
But it was so cool.
I think we've talked about it before. I think you can have the best system in the world. We talked about EOS and other type of systems. I can have the best system in the world, and if you don't have the right people that are fully engaged and want to be there and bought into the culture, it doesn't matter how good the system is.
Yeah, the line that I use, somewhere on my website, it says something to the fact that we believe that if you spend all kinds of money on your product and in your systems and in your procedures and not on your people, you're just wasting your time and your money.
That's right. I'm completely agree with that.
We are getting to the end of it again.
That's it.
It goes fast when you get a topic that kind of hits the heart. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So listen,
I'm living it, so that's, what's interesting to me is just to be in the midst of it and living it. Not only being a part of the transition, but impacting that transition. I think it's incredibly powerful for me and very gratifying.
Great. So anyway, in the midst of season 5 right now, we're looking for more topics that you want to hear. Please email us at scottandvince@gmail.com. We really appreciate the loyal support that you've been giving to us. And until next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.